Ricky Frazier Jr. How's it going, sir?
Doing well, doing well. How you doing?
Oh man, I can't call it. I love to believe that every day that we're on this side of the earth, we're good. Um, so you ready to jump in?
I'm ready to jump in. I'm ready. I'm ready
Uh,
to
uh,
go.
so Ricky, right now you're the VP of Customer Service Strategy over at Comcast. You guys are doing 100 plus billion. I would love to believe that when you start talking about customer service strategy, you are on the front lines of leadership, making sure that Comcast looks good and is doing well, from a customer perception or perspective. And so you had, the moniker of leader placed on you officially at a young age, and you know having the ability to have that weight of leadership on your shoulders in your 20s, right, and allow to go through in your 30s and now in your 40s. Talk to me about how that progression happened, how from the earlier days to where you are now. Talk to me about that sequence, that progression of your leadership style.
Well, as always, Charles, I appreciate you aging me, making sure everybody knew 2030. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Early 40s, no. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when I look back and when I started in my 20s. Like many of us started as an intern, starting kind of early on in the process of learning a company from an external lens, right? Like, I was really on the PR government relations side. So I got a chance to see the external perspective of how Comcast was perceived in the community. I worked a lot with politicians and really got a different perspective. And then when I came inside to really work full time, like you said, I was probably 23, 24 years old. I had a team of 10 or 12 people. The first step, I think, in leadership a lot of times is you end up focusing a lot on your people and execution. I think fundamentally just that, right? Just getting results. I think where the evolution has really come in is probably in two key areas that I talk a lot to people about. I think one is just evolving your communication style, learning how to listen better, learning how to be more of an empathetic leader, just leading with more empathy around people around you. I think that's a key component. How to communicate up, how to communicate with data, how to leverage PowerPoints, Excel spreadsheets, and telling the story. I think that was a key component that I had to evolve through my 20s and 30s, and kind of as the organizations get larger and larger, you have to tell the story to more and more people. And I think that becomes a key component where you're still trying to get people to execute results. And then the last one I think is the most complex one. The second part I was talking about is understanding connectivity. Understanding, so a lot of times people take connectivity as just automatically think about networking. I'm just meaning just understanding connecting the dots of, if you make this decision, it could impact this part of your organization. Do you have relationships in that part of the organization to talk to them about the decision you're trying to make? So there's all that component of understanding. Do you understand how the business connects? Do you understand how relationships connects? Do you understand the cooperation that's needed to get the result you're looking for now? That has been, Charles, the hardest evolution. Is someone said to me years ago, really right before I started this role, so probably almost 7 years ago, one of the SVPs in our company said, Ricky, the key is going to be for the next decade of leadership is going to be leading without position power.
Okay.
So if you don't have the position, you don't have the power, someone doesn't report to you, you still got to get to a shared outcome somehow as a team. Charles, that's probably been the biggest evolution, is learning how to do that, still getting results and outcome, understanding what you own and when you need to push harder and get those results, but also understanding how to step back and work with others and connect the dots and collaborate appropriately.
Now, I've had an opportunity to be in your presence in different situations, different settings. And what I found to be the most endearing part of your leadership style, at least to me, was your patience, but just as important is you're a good coach. I've watched you look at situations and say there's an ability to improve. We see articles all the time, Harvard Business Review, et cetera, comes out and says, go from manager to leader. And then when you're talking about leadership, having the ability to say, don't just delegate, coach. right? And they're all starting to get around that mindset, that mind frame of coaching is probably one of the most valuable, most important attributes of a leader, because now you're taking that team of 4 to 6 to 8 individuals who are your direct reports,
Right.
and you're guiding them through and being patient enough to let them make mistakes and then correct them and then say, okay, but they're having that constant feedback
Yeah.
portal. And for me, being in your presence, that's what I saw from you as a leader that I could take away and say, yeah, he's got it. And that's going to be, one of the key pillars to your success presently and as you move on. You care to elaborate on that? Am I off?
No, you nailed something that's really interesting. I think one of the biggest lessons I had to learn that I'd share with anybody that asked me is the difference, you touched on it, the difference between delegation and empowerment. I think, a lot of us delegate, right? We push our work or we push things to other people and say, oh, we're making it a learning experience. But when you empower people, you put them in position to make the decision. And in that case, they could do something right, they could make a mistake. That's when the coaching comes in. That's when you have to have the instincts to be able to say, here's why what you just did worked really well, right? Here's the things that you did that worked really well, was presented well, people read to it well, but here's the areas of opportunity. I think we have to be super deliberate about when we take those chances to coach. I think one of the things that I try to take seriously is every moment's a coaching moment. Sometimes we put the word Coach Charles on things and it's like, you're telling someone when they did something wrong, right? Like you're going back at them when something didn't happen the right way. I like to think about it as just a constant feedback loop. It's just a constant dialogue with someone about what's happening. And I think one of the things that I've had to focus on this latter part of my career is there you go. See, Charles making me feel old again. I said it now, latter part. Now I'm feeling old. But this latter growth part, this last quarter or this quarter I'm in my career, really doing a better job of positive reinforcement. Reminding people when I feel like just something simple that we were in an hour meeting, they had to present 45 minutes of that time, pinging them afterwards and just saying, hey, you got a second? And they think it's more takeaways, but so no, I just want to let you know, I thought you presented that great. Like I thought you did a nice job. I thought you were well prepared. That's a coaching moment, right? Just to say, this is what I think you were ready for, especially when people, and I think it's important from an exposure perspective, when people are presenting to your boss, right? So when people are presenting to my boss, my team, I do a lot with my team afterwards to say, hey, take a breath. It went well. Sometimes, Charles, you underestimate how self-conscious people can be, even in a professional setting. So I think that coaching attribute, the ability, again, like I talked about earlier, to listen and be empathetic to what people are hearing and make sure you understand what they're good at, I think is important. And the last point I would make on that I've always been actually pretty consistent about, and some of it is just previous life experience with sports and working with others. Sometimes too, as professionals, because many of us are fixed agents, we focus on what's broken. What I try to do as a coach is focus on what you're really good at, right? Like, so whatever you're a professional, whatever your A through D is that you're excellent at, sometimes I want to just over index and reinforce that. The feedback loop about coaching to get better has to be an alignment of that you're motivated, that you want to talk about that you want me to address that with you, that you want to be in a space where, yeah, Ricky, if I want your job, what else do I need to do? Well, I'm glad you asked, because let's talk about some of the areas of opportunity. So I think it's balance. I think it really is. I think it's really giving people perspective. And I appreciate your assessment on that, because it is something I've tried to take very seriously in my professional life and my personal life when it comes to being a coach.
So you've been a part of NAMIC for a while. You had the ability to actually go to the ELDP program. I think you were probably one of the first classes over in Virginia. I'm not dating you.
Class, man, Virginia class, ELDP 13. We was the class. It was not one of the classes. It was the best class.
So tell me about it. I mean, what made that program so special that today you still, talk with the other participants? You guys have a strong bond. Help me through that.
We do. I've just texted a bunch of people, from that class recently. Like there's probably 5 or 6 of us that keep up regularly. And I think there's that component of belonging. I think the uniqueness about, for all of us, when we think about our leadership journey, we all have our own journeys that are unique to us. And I always think it's interesting when you can meet people that you go, wow, they've had some similar experiences to what I've had, right? Like they've seen some things where they've went through a journey that was, I guess, kind of similar to mine. So I think being able to compare notes is something that's professionally interesting, and I think it's important. One of my favorite, Bible quotes is, iron sharpens iron. So I think to be around people who are hyper smart, hyper humble, had a great perspective on what they were trying to contribute to the workforce, just to be in that environment at days at a time with other people. There's so much I learned professionally and emotionally. And I think that was the thing I loved about the program, is, Charles, like you go to a lot of programs, and rightfully so, they tend to be very focused on the content of strategic tactics and materials and accounting. And we did that. But without ruining it for anybody that hasn't been yet, and without taking it away for someone that has some experience in the future, I really liked a lot of the work of combining your tactical, technical knowledge with some behavioral opportunities you may have, right? Some things that you need to learn about yourself. We did the Berkman. There was just different things that we did. And I love that experience, really getting a chance to see how other people may perceive me, getting a chance to hear other people's stories about how they perceive themselves and how their peers perceive them. And it got, again, not to give away too much, but it got emotional at times, like for people to really think through their journey. So it was excellent for me. I tried to really champion multiple people on my team that are hypos to really get into that program and have that experience and truly try to unplug as much as they possibly can from the day-to-day ops while they're out there, while they're a part of that, Charles, because I think that was important too, is to try to funnel in the work and focus on what needed to happen and doing the pre-work, and really spending the time to kind of create a new community, and a new culture of people that you want to be around and want to belong and be a part of.
Man, you're looking at my notes because you're taking me exactly to where I wanted to go, right? So you're talking to your hypos, and you're having a conversation about community, about culture. What do you say to them about networking and the value add of networking?
Yeah, that's a big one. It's changed so much, Charles. Like I think about even what it was 5 years ago to now, and then even what it was a few years ago to now because of the pandemic. It just has changed it. What I tell people about networking is, first, be genuine, right? Don't network at stuff that you personally don't have an interest in. Don't feel like you need to be at every event, every activity. I tell people that a lot. Find things that are really interesting to you, right? Like find people, find associations, find things that you want to be a part of, and find a way to do that and be interested across that kind of landscape. But the other part of this, Charles, is I think it goes back to, again, an earlier point that I'll reinforce in a different way. It's, go with the intent of not necessarily getting something, right? Like don't go to network and hoping, well, 6 months down the line, I hope it gives me X. I think you really have to be willing to become a part of a community and learn from people. I think you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to understand others that you're networking with. Anytime I go, like, for example, Charles, to the National NAMIC conference, it's in New York, I go up there. I'm usually not thinking about it from a perspective of my career trajectory, like where am I going to go from here? It's usually just to connect and listen to other people and what they're working on, just having that interest about the business. And I think that's important. You can't fake your energy. You either care about your industry, you either care about what you do, or you don't. So I tell people all the time, network against things that you care about. Meet people that are, when I say like you, that have similar motivations to you, similar motivations of ethics and what they're trying to do, and put yourself in that circle, right? There's certain type of conferences you'll never see me at. There's certain type of events you're not going to see me at because I can't fake my interest. I got to be interested, right? I'm interested in youth and where our young people are going to go in the future. I'm interested in financial health for people of color and where we're going there. I'm interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, more macro. I'm interested, of course, in the broader media industry. So again, you just network and start those things importantly, because I think one of the things that becomes really important, Charles, I ironically just had this conversation with a young lady that was talking to me about mentoring, is I think the networking component helps you turn mentorship relationships to sponsors. You gotta find people.
Get out of my
who
notes, man.
Hey, man, I'm stealing all your good stuff, probably. That's how I do it, man. I can't make this stuff up. I gotta steal it from smart people.
You are going every place. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to just sit back because I mean, you're there. We're
Right.
you know, and so because I was going to ask about mentoring, but you know what? I don't, because people understand how you mentor because you just gave a mentoring session just then.
Good.
Right. But I'm going to take a step back and let you go back into what you were talking about with sponsorship, because that is exactly where I was going next. From a sponsorship perspective,
yeah.
you know, granted, a person who's a mentor has a mentor-mentee relationship, let's say they're a mentee, you know, they may never become somebody who earned your sponsorship. That's a person that you're saying, hey, here's some nuggets of wisdom, etc.
Sure.
You know, sponsorship.
You're in my notes now. This is what I said to somebody yesterday. You're in my notes now. Keep going. Keep going. I'm going
to be quiet. Talk to me about sponsorship from your perspective.
Right. You're in my notes. Go ahead.
No, for sponsorship, you know, how does a person become a person who gains your sponsorship?
I think it's all about that credibility. So when you think about the mentorship, right, you can mentor people through, look, mentorship's about helping someone be better. Being a mentee is about leveraging your mentor's gaps and skill sets of something you don't have for them to make you better. So I think there's a credibility component that comes from the mentor-mentee relationship. To your point, to turn someone into a sponsor, you have to show some consistency of that behavior that you're ready to take on something else. And what happens with a good sponsor is they're the people jumping on the table for you when you're not in the room, right? They're the people that you don't even know about that are showing support for you when you're not around. Those are the people that are saying, hey, you know what, Charles is a pretty smart guy. Let's try him over here, right? Let's give him a chance to take a shot at this over here as an example. That becomes a very interesting conversation. For me as the mentor, again, I look for that level of consistency and commitment to themselves. Let's be very clear about that. Not consistency and commitment to me, consistency and commitment to themselves. That there was some level of feedback that I gave or that we talked about in a confidential setting that I recommend that you need to do to kind of better yourself in your career. And then, are you doing it? For you, not for me. I'm good. I got my own things to do, right? Like, are you doing it for you? Are you taking away that feedback and putting it into your own language and your own go-to, where you are seeing results and different outcomes for yourself in your professional environment? And then at that point, when you see that sustainability and that professionalism and that consistency and that commitment to themselves being important, you know, I say, okay, this is someone I got their back when the door closes. And if I'm in that room, I'm going to talk about them. And look, one thing I want to say, Charles, is really important, because some people may look at this and go, well, wow, you're asking people to be really selfish. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking people to think about their brand. All of us are brands. All of us are product. Like you got to think about your brand. So if you're showing me that you're committed to your brand and yourself and in the next level of what you're trying to do from a competency, skills, and behaviors perspective, and again, you're consistently there and you've got that intellectual curiosity, you're always looking to do something different and think about things differently, I've got your back. I'm trying to convert to be a sponsor. But it just doesn't, like you said, just doesn't start like that day one from a mentoring relationship.
There we go. Earlier, you had touched upon some of your core, not even core values, but your core passions. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in our prior conversations, we had that conversation about financial wellness.
Yeah.
I'm going to just drop that financial wellness and I'm going to take a step back and let you go with it.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, Charles. There's so much around, you know, systemically from a societal perspective. When you look at certain communities and you look at, you know, what's been done at times to people of color in our country, when we think about understanding how to get to the next place and how to get to the next thing. And I'm just even talking just from just a personal perspective. just knowing how to pay for college, knowing how to do different things in your own personal life, knowing how to finance and fund a car, knowing how all of these things, when you think about financial wellness in this country, I think becomes immensely important. When you think about the future of having focused and smart and committed and talented executives get to the next level of performance, they can't have financial burdens on their mind. And I think it becomes a component of, mental health, when you look at the financial burdens that people can take on at times. And I think that's really important, Charles, is that we start with our kids and our young people, really teaching them how money works, really how money can work for them. Just something simple, I think, that you and I discussed in a different setting about just how to save, how to automatically save and pay yourself first, right? Like how to save off your base salary before you go out and spend it on anything else, and how that saving starts to compound from an interest perspective. I mean, just those basic concepts that some of us may take for granted, just making sure people are thinking about themselves and how they manage their money in that way. And I think that's a huge future for our industry broadly, and just the U.S. economy is going to be more and more conversations about financial wellness, and how we get people financially healthy from an economics perspective is going to be key.
So, since we had that conversation last and this one right here, I've been churning in the back of my mind, a panel that I'm going to put together, which, if you're available, I'm going to make sure you're on, which is going to put together, it's going to put together a good amount of individuals to have, a lot of exploration into that topic. And I know your passion for that you're perfect for that conversation to go along with the other two individuals I'm thinking about. And that will be chock full of nuggets. You said something earlier that sort of resonated. You said, as leaders, you don't want that baggage, and I'm paraphrasing, you don't want that baggage of your financial burdens in the path of you being the best leader you can be. You don't want to sit up there and say, oh God, did I pay that rent? Well, not rent, hell, we're talking leaders, you better have a mortgage. Did I pay that mortgage or that whatever? Or I have these things hanging over my head as an overhang. If you've made it to certain stages of your career and of life, if you took care of your financial wellness, then those things become an afterthought because they're already on autopilot. They're taken care of, and that gives you the ability to be more expressive and free in whatever it is you're doing. One last before we get out of here.
Sure.
I'm looking at your son over your shoulder, and I know he's a little bit older now. He's about 10 years old right now.
Yeah, the big dog.
You have the ability to pay it forward as a coach for his baseball team. Tell us about that, and not just the perspective of I'm coaching his baseball team, but this still goes in alignment with your core value system of, to me, coaching, that patience you have, teaching individuals, in this case young men, different value systems. Please drop it on us.
Yeah, it really wasn't my plan. I started coaching him, helping, I should say, when he was 4, so 6 years ago, and did some coaching in college, different things like that, but really got pulled into it when he was 4.5, 5 years old. Coached him in baseball, coached him in basketball, and it has been an evolution, to your point, and a great experience. So first, I love working with young people. From a community perspective, it is definitely something that's calming for me when I can walk on a basketball court, walk on a baseball field with a bunch of, young people. It simplifies life. It really does. The things that matter to them are not all the things that are mattering to me right there in the world. And I think it's humbling. It lets me kind of free my mind a little bit and just think about their life, right? And think about little things. I mean, Charles, just from a simple comment, walking on the field as a coach going, hey, man, what'd you eat for breakfast this morning? What's going on? And just the stories that a 9 or 10-year-old will tell you at that point about their breakfast is just, it's hilarious, right? You just sit there and listen. And so for me, it's taught me a lot about empathy. When I watch not only my son, but I watch the rest of these boys, and they're a good team, a really good team. They're a travel team. And when they're at the plate and they're holding that bat, I do find myself sitting there looking at them going, man, what their nerves must feel like right now, like how nervous they must be with their parents behind the fence, me wondering if I'm going to say something if they swing and miss. And I think that has taught me a tremendous amount about positive reinforcement and empathy. I remember, Charles, just a discovery moment of a game we had lost. And it was against a team that the kids kind of knew some of the kids. And this was last year. They were 9. And I remember sitting on the bucket, and one of the coaches kind of said it before I got a chance to, and said, "Hey, how many of you guys were real nervous?" I was like, "That's a good question, coach." I said, "How many of you all were real, like, be honest with us?" I said, "We're away from the parents, like, we're away from your parents, like, let's just talk." And like all the kids slowly started to raise their hands. Like, I was so nervous. I didn't want to make a mistake. And that turned into, Charles, not us, "Hey, let's go run wind sprints. Let's go catch." We had a 15-minute conversation with these young men about life and about making mistakes and about failing and about getting up. And that's the most important thing. And how many times you're going to keep striking out, and how many times things are bad are going to happen to you. And I think all of those things teach you a lesson of, look, these young people are going to become men at some point in the workforce, right? They're going to be working in a team concept, most likely. Some of them working in an executive environment. And I think the more they can understand and help remove some of their insecurities and really get them comfortable about the talents and gifts that God gave them, I think that's going to be the important thing for them to take away from this journey, with me having the privilege, really the privilege, to coach them and to humbly be a part of their life, and I've had parents say so many kind things to me, Charles, about, my kid only listens to you, and, all these different things. And it's really because I listen to them. You know what I mean? I listen to them. I get to know them. I know their interests, their favorite things to do. And, when they can have a conversation with this old guy and they're a kid and I'm interested in what they're doing, that makes them feel important. Like, Coach Ricky want to talk to me about what I do or what I'm doing and all those different things. And then the other part too, Charles, I think it's taught me too, is don't underestimate children. Like they can do a lot. Like when you put things on them, there's a lot of times when parents would come to me and say, "Don't you think you're throwing a lot at them?" And I'm like, "I am," and they'll be fine. And
they'll be
every team I've coached has exceeded my expectations, because when they're emotionally positive and having fun, they can do a lot. I take that same thought process with me to work, is that there are times when you think about the amount of size and scale I've had the privilege of running with teams. I'll be candid. There's probably times where I really probably was talking down to people. Like I wasn't thinking about it in a way of, wait a minute. Why are you assuming people don't understand how this works? Let's step back for a little bit, show people some respect. It's really like pulling back and saying, you know what? These people can handle a lot. So let's give them, you talked about earlier, empowerment. Let's empower them. Let's bring them into the process more. Let's have their back and show them how the things get done. But again, you can't be on the other side of it though and completely lose your mind when people make a mistake. You have to understand how to let that go. You have to appreciate effort and always ask for effort and ask for partnership. But you can't let things go the wrong way when people make a mistake. The last thing I'll say about it, Charles, is funny. We just had our big kind of, kick off the new season meeting. And one of the things I mentioned to the parents was, look, one of the things I want to let you all know that I'm going to do that you have seen from me before, but I'm really going to reinforce it this year, is these young men have now played together for more than a year. They trust each other. They play video games together and all these different things. I am not going to allow them to put each other down and be negative with each other. I'm just not going to put up with it. And it's very much, to your question, the same philosophical kind of fabric I am in the professional setting. I just don't let dysfunction go on. I don't accept it. I really make sure to hold people accountable, to work with others. So a lot of times when my team comes to me, or one of my people one-on-one will come to me with something, and I'll give them my 10-minute perspective and we'll talk. And I'll say, "Oh, by the way, did you go talk to such and such, your peer, on this yet? Have you and her worked through this?" And they're like, "No, I haven't talked to her." Well, you need to talk to her. Y'all need to work through it and come back to me and let me know that you're both okay, right? Like, it's really important that, you have to understand in your career that your peer networking, your peer relationship can be just as important and sometimes more important than worrying about the next level up, where like your peer relationship is crucial. Your teammates are key. So yeah, I can talk about coaching these young people all day, Charles. They're so much fun, man. They keep me young, and then they keep me old sometimes, because then they'll ask me to race them or do something, and I realize I'm old and I'm hurting afterwards, Charles. But they're man, they're so much fun. I'm so happy for these guys, and it's been a great humbling experience that God has given me this opportunity to coach them for as long as I can. He's getting to the age where I probably have to let him go soon, Charles, because somebody else is gonna coach him soon. But it's been fun to be able to do it for as long as I've been able to.
Ricky, man, I hope the people who watch this, from NAMIC perspective and just individuals in general, get a true sense of your spirit, right? Because I can tell that there are individuals who are working within the organization who are like, damn, I want to be on Ricky's team, right? Because of everything you just threw out there. But within that, because of that style, I know you're winning. Yeah. And whatever that winning benchmark happens to be within the organization, right? No different than you're winning at coaching for the team. Hey, you said, they're really good and they're a travel team, right? You're like, no, they're good, right? And so, but that was something. They weren't good day one. They didn't come in there swinging, hitting home runs. They had, that cohesion that took place was a process, right? And so, I say this with all sincerity and humility, is that Comcast is lucky to have you, right?
I appreciate that.
Because, as in my role, I have exposure to a lot of leaders, right? And I talk to a lot of different individuals, and you all of them are good. There hasn't been a bad one yet in terms of me listening to them and hearing their philosophies. But I also understand when I hear a person who has that empathy, that patience, that coaching ability, that charisma, all of that packaged in, that will allow for current and future success to just go as far as they want it to go, And so on behalf of NAMIC and myself, I appreciate you taking the time to come in and educate the audience and dropping the jewels you did.
I appreciate it. Charles, one last thing I say, if I could say one thing, and then close us out. What I would just say to everybody out there, there's just been so much that's happened. If I think about the last few months now, taking on years in society as a whole, one thing that I've had to do, and I really appreciate your compliment, and I think where I've gotten better is investing in myself. I talked about earlier brand, but I mean, you see the books behind me. I love to read. I take time to really kind of invest in myself. If I don't know something, I take the time, but I take a lot of spiritual time too, right? I rest and really feed my spirit, spend time with my son, my family, and I love the beach. And you gotta keep yourself healthy, through this process, because I believe physical health follows emotional health, and I think you got to take that time as much as you can. So for all the leaders out there, I really would say, we give a lot to our companies, right? We give a lot of energy to others. Please make sure as leaders, please make sure you do step back and assess, because you're no good. If you're not good, you're not any good to your team. So you just got to assess. So that was the only thing I was going to say, Charles, is just, keep investing in yourselves, everybody, and you'll be in a good place.
Burnout is real, right? If you don't take yourself, burnout is a real thing.
Very much so.
Ricky, we appreciate you, man. Hey, listen, until the next time, be well, be strong.
Thank you. Humbly appreciate this. Thanks for having me on, man.